is in Rwanda on a 2-day working visit where he and President Paul Kagame held excellent relations between their countries and signed new bilateral agreements, including a status of forces agreement to strengthen security cooperation. To unpack the significance of this visit, we're joined now by independent political analyst and risk consultant Marisa Lourenço. Marisa, thank you for joining us. How are you on this Thursday?
Good morning, Asanda. I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thank you so much, and thanks for making time as usual. Let's start on the broader significance of President Daniel Chapo's first official visit to Rwanda since taking office.
Oh, it's coming at a very interesting time. Mozambique is really desperate to restart the onshore LNG projects, but it seems that some of the oil majors, mostly Total Energies, are still quite nervous about the state of security within the province. And central to securing the province and not really creating stability, there's still huge issues there, but definitely the Rwanda Defense Forces have been seen as key to allowing business to continue, creating a more enabling business environment amongst all of this insecurity. It's not really clear where the relationship between Rwanda and Mozambique was going. I'm personally surprised it's taken Chapo so long to actually do an official visit to Rwanda. So I think it's coming at a time when Mozambique is really pulling out all of the stops to make sure that it makes all of the investors happy so that the LNG projects can restart. This is a fundamental part of it.
So, with the signing of the status of forces agreement between the two countries, what does this agreement mean in practical terms?
So we don't have the details of it yet, but basically it seems to extend it's even more of a formalization of the existing bilateral agreement that's been between Mozambique and Rwanda since mid 2021. So mid 2021 is when the RDF first entered Mozambique. Around 1,000 troops came into the province and tried to secure key areas. One of them was the Palma district, which is located where the onshore LNG projects are. So it seems now that, it was never really clear how long Rwanda was going to be in the country for. We've heard about 2028, 2029. They've spoken about equipping the Mozambican armed forces so that they are then able to continue helping to secure the province, even when the is on. But it seems now that there's a much more solid agreement in place by signing a status of forces agreement. And I think that this will give really big reassurance to business in the area. And it's also an extension, again, of these stronger bilateral ties between Rwanda and Mozambique that we saw start under the former President Nyusi from mid-2021.
So, beyond security, do you think this visit will pave the way for deeper economic and trade ties between Rwanda and Mozambique? You talk about some of the fears in the business community being allayed as far as security agreements are signed.
Truthfully, no. I think that the main focus of this is the security agreement and the ongoing presence of the RDF. I'm sure that they will mention other agreements and maybe talk about boosting trade between the two countries, but neither countries really are big producers in any major kind of sector. So I think really the focus of this is security. If we look at also at who Chapo brought with him, the main figure there is the Minister of Defense, Christophe Chume. And yes, he brought people from the Finance Ministry and then, from the International Relations Cabinet as well. But really the focus here is on defense. And I'm sure we'll hear about wanting stronger ties between the two, but this is really the main focus. And again, it's coming at a time where Chapo has been urging Total Energies to restart its project. Total has allegedly been very worried about the continued presence of the RDF. So I think it was very important that a more firm agreement had to come into place, and I think that this is dominating the focus between the two countries.
What is needed then to ensure that clear guidelines are in place when it comes to this security partnership between Mozambique and Rwanda?
Well, having a status of forces agreements is actually much better than the previous just sort of bilateral agreement. It gets rid of some of the legal grey areas in terms of it will give the RDF a more clearly defined mandate than it might have had previously. We might get more clarity on what some of its timelines are for being in the province and maybe what its role actually is. Obviously it's sort of been defined as peacekeeping, but it's not I don't think we've really had a very, very clear idea until now. And I think the status of forces agreement, just by its very nature, will spell that out a lot more clearly because it has to.
As far as clear guidelines are concerned, should there also be some flexibility exercised between the two countries where, they look at what the future could be and the unforeseen? Or could that flexibility in terms of the clarification of guidelines with the RDF pose its own challenges?
I'm sure that there is some kind of flexibility. I mean, a status of forces agreement is not going to be something that goes on indefinitely. It would have to be renewed at various points in time. So it will have to respond to the evolving nature of the insurgency in Cabo Delgado as well. But I think what's really key here are the optics of this. You know, the RDF is much more respected, I think, among the international community for bringing or for being able to provide some kind of resistance against the insurgents, much more than the Mozambican armed forces. And this is very important to have in place for that reason.
How does this visit reflect President Chapo's foreign policy priorities and his approach to regional diplomacy, especially compared to his predecessor, Philippe Nyusi?
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting because Nyusi, especially during his second term, between 2019 and 2024, he really seemed to take a step away from closer relations with South Africa, and he didn't seem to approve of the SADC mission in Mozambique, which is also to fight the insurgency, and there were a lot of issues around that. And that mission, of course, obviously had involvement from many SADC members, but was primarily led by South Africa. And it was under his tenure that Mozambique forged much closer ties with Rwanda, particularly on the security front, but also politically. There were various agreements that were made. When Chapo came into office, Rwanda didn't seem to be as much of a priority, and he seemed to be keen to reset some of the friction with the ties between South Africa and Mozambique. But the thing is, with the RDF continuing to be in Cabo Delgado, it's not possible, to not nurture those ties with Rwanda. So I think that he's now striking much more of a balancing act in his foreign policy approach.
Marisa, we're going to leave it there for today. We always appreciate your insights. Have a great Thursday.
All right, thanks so much, and the same to you.
Thank you. Marisa